Hi, my name's Konrad, and I'm one of the original co-creators of the Frostpunk LARP, of the Last Recon LARP. I'm here to answer a few questions you might have and help you prepare as best as I can for the adventure, for the upcoming adventure. So there's a few things that I'd like to cover. I have a little bit of a cheat sheet just off camera here, so I'll be sort of glancing to the side. So what kind of LARP is it? Well, as you probably saw in the design documentation, it is a psychological survival horror LARP. And it's a bit of a mouthful when it comes to that description. The idea behind it and the essence of what that means, obviously we divided it up in the design doc to explain, but the idea is a lot of what happens in the mind of the character, happens in your head. While there's a lot of things happening around you and there's going to be lots of events and things to do and participate in, there is a psychological aspect to it. So it means that a lot of it will be the development of the character and taking a look at which way you go in terms of decision-making process, how you justify it to yourself. So it's a lot about immersing yourself in the story, immersing yourself in the reality the reality that is presented. So you'll be put in front of various situations. You'll be put in front of obviously various conflicts between players, between groups, between characters, of course, and you'll have to decide how to respond to those things that is true to your character. What we tried to do with the original with the LARP is we tried to move the reality that was created for the computer game by 11-bit studios into a playable live action scenario. That actually wasn't that straightforward because obviously, as you know, the game itself is a bit more on the strategy side. It is about city building and civilization maintenance, whereas at a LARP scale, that isn't very sustainable. I wish I could, but I can't create a situation where you get to actually build your own city from scratch. So what we did was we took the reality and the sort of the universe that 11-bit studios created and tried to put as much of it into an alternative world where we layered on things that are far more playable in a live action scenario. So what I thought when playing the game, when playing the PC game, a lot of the time I started thinking, all right, well, I have sort of these people dealing with their problems, dealing with the issues, dealing with larger scale things, and me as, whether it be steward or captain, of course, I had to be making the grand decisions. But obviously, underneath that, you can see that in the game, because it's beautifully highlighted with various quotes and snippets. It is the day-to-day life of the people. And I thought, that is a fantastic scenario, fantastic area to explore from the perspective of live action roleplay. And so we thought, all right, let's take that and let's add that layer. Let's make it a little bit more like trying to put Frostpunk, the game, into like an RPG scenario and put it into the realm of those games. Which, by the way, if anybody from 11-bit is watching this, I would absolutely adore, and I know I'm not alone. So what we tried to do is put as much of that as possible into that scenario. How did we do it? Well, we thought about, all right, when you make those decisions as steward or as captain, how do they affect the individual? What happens behind those decisions? Because obviously in a strategy game, you point and click things and grand things happen. But obviously somebody enforces those decisions. In sort of, if you stretch it out and if you sort of zoom in, somebody actions those things. Somebody listens to your decisions, somebody that chose you, and those that didn't choose you have to somehow be made to follow your decisions. So how does that happen? And we put all of that together into this, into the thinking that we created. So we created the idea of 3 layers of the game. There is the layer that we would all recognize, which is getting food, getting resources, getting the basics done, getting heat, getting a place to sleep. The things that we know are sort of the main issues that we deal with when playing the game itself. And that is the sort of the grand scheme of things that everybody is concerned about. Then there is that second layer, which is the societal level. If you take a look at the next stage of any group of people surviving, there are these analyses that state that for a group to survive, you have to have a certain amount of people so that social interactions can take place and they solve issues together, right? So the whole idea of strength in numbers, where you take a look at what is needed for a group of people to sustain life, to sustain themselves as a society, as a group, as a coherent structure. And then there's the third layer, which is the personal layer, which is, okay, how do I deal with my issues? I have problems. This is 19th century Earth, right? So there's a lot of considerations as to, okay, what did I do still back in London before the world ended, which is not that long ago? What would have been going through my mind? What would have been my family issue, my family situation, my friends, my employment, my profession, my skill sets? How do I adapt those to this scenario that I now am in? And so a lot of those things would be sort of, as we layer it out, we try to put pointers in those directions in the character sheets themselves. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, obviously, they have 1 is this, 2 is this, 3 is this, but it permeates across the game. And it also permeates across the events during the game. So yeah, you can expect, of course, you can expect issues with access to food, with access to medicine, with access to sleep, with access to safe sleep, should I say. But also you should expect to see social issues with where do I fit in? Where do we fit in? What do we do to take care of ourselves? And then personal, what do I do with myself? Where am I in this whole situation? Don't worry, the character sheets do lay a lot of these things out quite well. But it's all about how many of them you want to enjoy and sort of sink your teeth into. So that's kind of what we tried to do with the LARP itself, with the game. Now I'm taking a look at some of the questions I have here. So access to food. So obviously, will I sleep outside? Will I have issues with food? You as a person, as an individual, as a person traveling in to take part in the LARP, absolutely not. Every single person taking part in the game, if I should say, will have food, will have a place to sleep, will have a blanket underneath which you can sort of keep your warm sleeping bag. So everything will look great, and you will have a place to sleep, you will have time to sleep, you will have warm food, you'll have everything. The idea is that the character might not. So even though you as a Bob Dole, as a sort of John Smith, will be fine, based on your decisions within the game, you may be put into a situation where you get informed that your character didn't get food. The way that'll be solved will be described in more detail during the workshops before the game. It's going to be very, very straightforward. In essence, you'll have a little sort of note that will say whether you are eating in character or out of character. And there's going to be a little bit of a mechanic, a little bit sort of a method to play through that, so that if you are eating as a player and not as a character, there is a little bit of a sort of pathos associated to this, so that you can take that time to consider the suffering that your character is going through, even though you yourself are enjoying a delicious warm, delicious hot meal with a drink, right? But you, don't worry, everybody will have food, everybody will have a place to sleep, don't worry about that at all. What is the story about? No spoiler alert, because obviously I'm not going to say too much, but the story itself takes place a while after New London was set up, but it takes place before the events of the game Frostpunk 2. So it takes place more in sort of at the nearer the latter end of the first Frostpunk game. The city is undergoing major decisions, major changes, major evolution as it sort of finds itself and finds its ways to survive. And then at one point during this, there is evidence that quite far away a smoke signal was seen. And that smoke signal means that it looks like there is a large group of people, large group of potential survivors that we should bring back here. The powers that be in New London at that point decide, all right, we need to make a larger expedition. So I'm sure you'll be aware that expeditions were typically just a couple of people, a few people being sent to gather resources or find survivors. The idea here is obviously there's 50 of you, so it's a massive expedition because it's the best part of sort of a quarter or a fifth of the entire city is being sent to gather those people with resources, with wagons, with extra food. So what you're actually gathering with you, what you're actually taking with you to that place, is a huge amount of reserve food and reserve firewood, things like that, to help those people and bring them back, right? So that's kind of the idea, and that's the moment we start the game. That you're traveling, and suddenly on the horizon, or rather on the near horizon, you see a snowstorm coming towards you. That snowstorm is unexpected. And the first thought in everybody's mind is, what's happened? Something terrible is happening in terms of the weather, in terms of the atmospheric conditions. We need to hide. Your scouts, so the scouts of the expedition, quickly find this little place off to the side where they go, looks like there is something here. We don't know what it is, but it looks like there's something we need to hide. And the entire group, the entire expedition, so all 50 of you, jot off to the side and find this place. And the LARP begins the moment you enter this place. The moment you go in, you'll be finding yourself in a situation where you start thinking, okay, the snowstorm is coming, we need to prepare, we need to decide, and we need to make it through. And then obviously all the considerations therein. So why didn't we figure this out? Why did we go this way? Was there a risk associated? Etc., etc., etc. So everything sort of, you start going through the decision-making process as to what now, considering a snowstorm is about to hit you. This is not the idea that the snowstorm will hit you in 3 days' time, and obviously, or 2.5 days' time after the LARP. That's not the idea. The idea is, as you enter the location of the game, the snowstorm has hit. Obviously, we won't be able to order that perfect weather, although if we do get a snowstorm, pros and cons, but if we get an actual snowstorm, fingers crossed, this is going to be amazing. I say fingers crossed, I'll be there with you. So if anything does happen, I'm right there with you. If it does happen, fantastic, we don't need to LARP it. If it doesn't, if there's an actual snowstorm, there are plot explanations, so you will be asking the questions, how come we're okay over here, right? So we'll play through that. And that is the story. The story is, all right, we've arrived. Every single person has their own individual tales, individual stories, individual considerations, issues, problems, etc., etc. And as a group, we now need to figure out what's going on. And of course, you found this location that you didn't know about, that you didn't know that there is this sort of brick structure. It's in this sort of little dell, very large dell. So there's playing on that plot, that idea. So there you go. That's kind of the introduction to what the story is. How to get into character. What was the best way to get into character? Trust your instincts is the best piece of advice. This is a piece of advice that you could give to anybody LARPing in any game. I will make some additional notes here considering this is Frostpunk, but trust your instincts. Just look at what's happening around you, consider your character sheet, remember the most interesting bits from your character sheet that you find most interesting. Try to remember everything, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world, don't worry. Just lose yourself in it. Remember that every single person that is there wants to have fun. All of us, or every single person that will be there. So it's not a matter of picking and choosing bits and pieces so that I can somehow fit in with others. Just immerse yourself in the story, because we try to write it such that everybody will lose themselves in it if you just trust the process. Usually, this is just a bit of a heads up if this will be your first time, usually it takes a little bit of time. It's very difficult to immediately get into character and start thinking and talking like your character, and having sort of the emotional process of your character from minute 3 of the LARP, right? Even people that have been doing this for 20, 25 years, it's not that simple, right? So don't worry if in the beginning you find yourself sort of looking for your own footing. That's completely fine. Have some of the conversations. Don't worry about asking questions that initially may seem a little bit odd. No such thing as a bad question. No such thing as a wrong question. Just get straight into it. And in order to get into your character, get into the Frostpunk world. That's the best thing to have in your mind. Remember, it is constantly cold. Warm is -15, -20 degrees Celsius, right? That's what you consider we're doing okay. So everybody is suffering. Everybody is in a difficult position. Food was scarce when you were in New London. Now, the only good news is that you were traveling with a lot of food to take to those people. So you have some food reserves, but still, eating some of those reserves may put their lives in jeopardy. If you are to sort of enjoy a larger meal, right? So remember the universe you're in. Remember this is 19th century Earth, right? So remember the things that people were going through in those days. There are some considerations, some ideas about books and stories, series, movies to watch, to read, music to listen to get into it, to sort of start feeling the world. If you have questions about which ones, so you want to find them, just pop a question directly to LARP Venture. We'll get back to you ASAP and give you a couple of ideas. So the best thing you can do is just remember the world you're in and trust your instincts. Just trust your gut. There will be, inevitably, in the beginning, there may be feelings of sort of slightly cringy sensations of, oh, I feel weird asking this question. Why am I asking this question? This is made up. That's fine. Everything over there is made up. All right. Everybody's there to get through it, into the character, and to sort of to sink their teeth into it. So trust the process. What's in the character sheet? This is the last question, by the way. If you'll have more, fire away. We'll get back to you. But what's in your character sheet? Background. So if you think about this if you think about parts of live action roleplay as improv theatre typically sets out circumstances and the skeleton of an outline, right? It's a character skeletons, character outlines, circumstances, scenarios, go, you're in, have fun. If you, on top of that, layer below that, you layer a much deeper understanding of the character. So that's when you get into more like a movie level background of the character, where my character comes from, what he or she was like, their family, their hopes and dreams, their crises, a lot of those things. That's what you'll have in your character sheet. You will have a lot of their internal animosities, their internal dreams, their internal thought process. So there is a little bit of an idea to give you an idea as to what your character was doing or thinking. This is why we're doing this whole idea of picking and choosing who plays what, and obviously you might have ideas as to a particular profession. But on top of that, obviously, there's that huge personal element. So, like I said in the beginning, my name's Konrad. I know that what I won't be playing is I won't be playing Konrad. The person I'm playing might not have the same opinions as me, might not have the same views, might not have the same methods of responding to fear. So obviously we got sort of the fight, flight, or freeze. Well, as Konrad, I might respond with one of those three more often than not. As that character, it might be something else. So you'll have some ideas as to how your character would respond to this. And that lets you play out scenarios in a very different way to how they would look like in the real world. It gives you a little bit of fun, and it gives you a little bit of ideas as to sort of which way to go. So you'll have that. Obviously, you'll have information about your profession. You'll have information about some of your friends, your acquaintances, your enemies. So you'll have notes as to who you know in more detail. That does not mean you don't know anybody else. Everybody in the scenario is part of an expedition, is part of the expedition from New London, where you all lived together for quite a few months now. So every single person is allowed to know each other. So remember, if you're coming with a few friends and not all of you are in a group where you are in your character sheets described as you are best buddies with, you are best friends with, you are family, brother, sister, mother, anything, that doesn't mean you don't know each other. You can always build on top of that and add, okay, look, I've got this character, I want us to know each other, I don't think you're in my character sheet, who do you play, X, Y? Okay, so who are you? Well, you worked in the Night Watch, or you worked as one of the miners, you worked in the fledgling medical center. So let's have a think about, right, how we met. Did I go to you? Did I help you out at some point? Did I work with you a little bit? And you will be able to build on top of that. That is also something you'll be able to do during the workshops, before the game, and of course will help you and support you in doing this before the game, before you arrive on site. So there will be channels where you'll be able to have some of these discussions to meet each other a little bit better and establish some of those things to make sure that you can always play with all of your friends. I don't know if that's coming through, but that's my son, and clearly wanting to come in, which is fantastic timing because that was the last question. We may do this again. We may answer a few more questions. We may try and consider doing a live QA thing if you'll want, but let us know. And if for some insane reason we don't do this again before the game, I'll see you there. I will be there on site with you the whole time. So we'll meet in person. Can't wait. Stay frosty and remember, the city must survive.